Okay, good evening. I'd like to call to order the City of Camarillo Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024. And Mr. Secretary, will you call roll?
Commissioner Vandermeulen.
Present.
Commissioner Davidson.
Present.
Chair Edsel.
Here. And the record will show that we have two commissioners that are absent tonight. And then Commissioner Vandermeulen going to lead us in the flag salute. So
If you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on tonight's agenda is our consent calendar, which consists of our meetings from March 19th, 2024. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Vandermeulen and seconded by Rob Davidson. Please vote.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Vandermeulen,
Yes.
Chair Edsel.
Yes. Okay, then we're now on the agenda item, the public comments, and this is the opportunity for members of the public to speak on an item that's not on tonight's agenda. And according to some calls the city got, I think some people may think this is about the airport, and it's not about the airport. It's so if anybody wants to talk about the airport that came for that tonight, this would be the time to speak because it's a non-agenda item. So, or on any non-agenda item. Okay, seeing nobody come forward, I'll close the public comment and then move right into our item B with the staff report.
Good evening, Chair Edsel, Commissioners. Tonight, the project before you is an amendment to the airport's North Specific Plan and an addendum to the 2016 final subsequent environmental impact report. The addendum evaluates the changes to the specific plan and considers the impacts of a proposed project on approximately 46 acres that would include auto dealerships and up to 600,000 square feet of limited industrial development. The actual project before the Planning Commission tonight is not to be considered, and it will be brought to before the Planning Commission at a future date. So we're just covering the addendum and the specific plan amendment. So the specific plan was adopted in 1986 and has been amended on 10 occasions since. The specific plan covers approximately 219.6 acres just north of the airport. The specific project that will be brought later is the Springville component, which is on this approximately 46 acres here. So then we have the McGrath area here, which is outside of the city limits, but within the curb restriction boundary, and could possibly be annexed in the future, and would then be developed as part of the specific plan. And then we have the rest of the specific plan, which consists of the Camarillo Town Center. Home Depot is here, there's the approved Costco site here, and then this section and this section would still be vacant land. So the applicant is Faring Capital LLC, and they've proposed an amendment to allow automobile centers and supporting uses to the land uses allowed within the specific plan. The specific plan has defined automobile centers and supporting uses as providing for a comprehensive auto center with a range of services including a cafe or market, restrooms, customer lounge, customer business center, car wash, detailing, on-site repair and maintenance, tire services, parts and accessory sales, EV charging, and other related amenities. The auto dealers would have to be factory authorized franchises and could sell commercial and private vehicles, both new and used, but new vehicle sales must be the primary business. Staff also took this opportunity to update the specific plan to adjust to current conditions within the specific plan area, and those updates included updates to exhibits and other adjustments to add additional flexibility within the plan. Modifications to the specific plan as well as future proposed developments are considered projects under CEQA and therefore require evaluation under CEQA. So an addendum to a previously prepared environmental impact report or subsequent environmental impact report can be prepared when modifications are proposed and analysis demonstrates that all potential impacts associated with modification are within the envelopes of impacts that are already evaluated in a previously certified EIR, or environmental document. The specific plan, when this was originally adopted, evaluated a mix of land uses, including commercial, office, research and development, and a 190-room hotel, totaling 4,379,000 square feet of development. The specific plan has subsequently been amended 10 times to make changes in the specific mixes of the different land uses. In 2008, an EIR was adopted for the Springville interchange, which impacted the specific plan by reducing the net land area for development, but improved the circulation possibilities within the specific plan area. In 2011, an EIR was adopted for the specific 46 acres that we're discussing for the project and evaluated 700,000 square feet of industrial office uses. Then in 2016, a subsequent environmental impact report was adopted for the same 46 acres, and it evaluated approximately 270,000 square feet of commercial and 200,000 square feet of industrial. And then in 2023, just last year in December, there was an addendum to that was adopted to revert everything back to the 2011 land use. So the current proposal by Faring is that they will be building 600,000 square feet of industrial and 218,000 square feet of automobile center uses. So if you look up here, you see that we have the total of 4,379,000 square feet of development that was allowed within the specific plan. Total development currently built within the specific plan, which is Camarillo Town Center and some of the spaces on the south side of Ventura Boulevard, equate to about 700,000 square feet. The Costco development has been approved, which is 160,000 square feet. There's an American Tire that's been approved that is 39,000 square feet. And so then the current proposal of 600,000 square feet of industrial and 218,000 square feet of auto uses brings the total existing approved and proposed development within the specific plan to 1,717,000 square feet, which is just 39% of the total land development that has been originally considered under the specific plan. So we're only about 40% developed according to this. Now, again, as part of the addendum, there's some additional analysis that was done by Rincon, and in the process of identifying or doing the cultural resources analysis for the site, the previous site, it was found that the site, the proposed site, 46 acres, was the previous location for Pleasant Valley Baptist Church. It was identified as having been located on the site just south of the 101 freeway, so it was right here. This is Old Conejo Road, which became the freeway. We have the Sholey House is up here. This no longer exists. Wood Road is over here. The Springville interchange is now coming right through this area. So until the 1930s, that church stood somewhere near the eastbound off-ramp of Springville interchange, and it was identified in the previous 2008 EIR that was done for the Springville interchange. Further research has also revealed that the bell from the church was relocated and now stands outside Pleasant Valley Bible Church on Ponderosa Drive and Lantana Street. The altar is in the inventory of the Pleasant Valley Historical Society, and the remains of 60 burials, including the pastor William Wood, which Wood Road is named after, were reinterred at Ivy Lawn Cemetery in Ventura or other nearby cemeteries. Other records could possibly have been lost, so there is a possibility that human remains are still on the site. Mitigation measures for such an eventuality were included in the 2008 EIR, the 2011 EIR, and the 2016 final SEIR, and would be included as conditions of approval for any future development on this property. The addendum therefore concludes that no new information or significant impacts have been identified during this analysis. The proposed modifications are within the envelope of impacts that had been evaluated previously, and the addendum is the appropriate environmental document. So the specific plan, as previously mentioned, the applicant is seeking approval of a full-service auto sales and service lot, providing customers with food options, options for relaxation while waiting for service, options for working from the dealer's business center. They would also sell new and used vehicles, but the only dealerships that would be allowed in the specific plan area would be recognized franchises. Design language for the automobile center has been added to the specific plan language as well. To accommodate better signage for auto dealers, the city's revised the signage requirements within the specific plan to allow the dealerships or any commercial enterprise that is over 5 acres with at least 150 feet of frontage along the freeway to have a 35-foot tall freestanding sign, which is consistent with those that are allowed in the town center. So Home Depot and the sign are all both 35 feet because they have freeway frontage. Additional modifications within the specific plan, including we've updated all the exhibits. We've updated the circulation section. We've updated the utilities section. We've made corrections where errors were found. We've done enhancements to improve clarity. Additionally, we have included an increase in the allowable height in the area to 50 feet, where the navigation easement will allow it. And so if you look, actually, this is one of the updated exhibits, and the hatched area is the airport navigation easement. It goes from the airport properties northern property line to 1,050 feet into this area. But then within this area and in the specific plan now, there are height zones. So the green would be height zone 1, which would allow 35 feet within the navigational easement allowable. In the pinker zone, it's going to be up to 40 feet, and then only along the freeway would it be allowed to be 50 feet. And then there's also been language and definitions. Well, let me step back. There's also, somebody could actually go above 50 feet still with a CUP through the Planning Commission. Language and definitions as well as regulations regarding warehousing and loading zones were also added into the specific plan to discourage the use of these industrial properties as distribution or fulfillment centers and to encourage manufacturing, and if we get our best case scenario that we would like to see, research and development in life sciences. 2 previous constraints due to the work that's been done in this area were actually moved from the specific plan constraints into actual opportunities, and that's because in the original specific plan, we didn't have Ventura Boulevard going through or Springville, so a constraint was the lack of good circulation within the specific plan. That's now been fixed. And the other constraint was the lack of utilities within the specific plan. And by building out the roads, we also included the utilities, so we no longer have that as a constraint, and it's now an opportunity within the specific plan area. So the proposed Airport North specific plan amendment has been weighted against the community's goals and the goals of and policies of the general plan and has been found to be consistent. Therefore, the staff is recommending that you adopt a resolution recommending to the City Council approval of the addendum to the final subsequent environmental impact report number 2014-8 and adopt a resolution recommending to the City Council an amendment to the Airport North specific plan to update the specific plan and add automobile centers and supporting uses as an allowable land use. And that completes my presentation.
Great, thank you. The commissioners have any questions for Paul? Yes, Beverly.
A couple. When you were talking about the uses between commercial and industrial, if I heard it right, you said that the auto dealerships type would be the commercial, all the rest was industrial. But we were looking at what it mentioned was like there would be some mixed use buildings, commercial buildings, possibly some other commercial uses, a cafe. I don't know if that was included on the automotive or another part of it. So out of all the other buildings that we see proposed on the proposal, are those all intended to be industrial, or are they in research and development, or can they be changed to commercial office or any sort of large retail type?
Yeah, so the area that is, this property is completely zoned as LM, so it will allow the corporate use, it will allow any of the uses within the specific plan, which would include the automobile uses, as well as corporate retail, mixed commercial. In the McGrath section, that's also been, is an area where we have some very specific mixed commercial that we'd like to see go in there, as well as some office. And then the rest of it, it would be limited industrial, which we hope will also be more R&D. But the cafe and things like that, the proposal is that they would be integrated to the actual automobile dealership so that it's all on one 10-acre site. Okay. But that is going to be, again, we'll be getting into those details when the project proposal comes through as an industrial plan development permit.
Yeah, I didn't know if maybe we would see like in one of the buildings maybe mixed use with the cafe or some other retail stores and offices above, or something like that.
No, the intent that the applicant has provided is that all the supporting uses for the actual automotive center would be within the building of the automotive center, and then the other buildings that are shown on the proposal would all be industrial buildings.
And then if it were that way, the cafe would only be like open to the auto dealership
Well, you would always,
customers, and
you would be able to access it. from
anybody would be
any-
able to
any-
go up and access the cafe area?
Yeah, and per the specific plan, the intent of the design is that this also become a very walkable 46 acres, to where there are going to be sidewalk paths within that would get you to the auto dealership, so that anybody using the industrial could, of course, go and use the cafe. It'll also tie into Costco and Camarillo Town Center as well, so that industrial users would be able to walk down to Camarillo Town Center and use those as well.
Okay,
So it will be very walkable, and there will be a lot of options for the industrial workers.
okay. I may have some more, I'm not sure, but
How
did
about
you have
you,
any
Mr.
questions, Rob?
Davidson?
So my question is, as the layout of the site plan that I have viewed, it appears that this auto center becomes an island surrounded by light industrial and commercial uses. How is that consistent with what we see other auto complexes doing, where they're surrounded by other places to draw shoppers? I'm concerned about longevity of an auto center that's sort of an island that people may or may not want to go to, and it's a very difficult property once developed to then retool to another purpose. Have we looked at that, and would it not be more appropriate to potentially look at the McGrath site for a larger scale, if that's what the city is interested in doing, a larger scale auto complex where you could then attract more dealerships and more development? Because it seems to me a one-off in the middle of commercial is sort of a recipe for failure.
So the auto center uses have actually been, in the specific plan, allowed on basically any property that has frontage, which would include the McGrath property when it's finally annexed into the city. So that process would require, of course, annexation into the city first. And then once it's annexed, then it would require pre-zoning and then zoning. And so that's a very long, involved process. The intent here is that, like many auto dealerships that you see in Ventura and in Oxnard, what we really have here is we have the auto centers being freeway frontage where they get the most visibility. And that's the intent, and their signage, their large signage would be along there. And then it's really a quick access to go Springville Drive, Ventura Boulevard, and then up the private road that's going to be built and into these auto dealerships. And then additionally, with Costco coming in, there's also most likely an anticipation that there could be other development that would bring some of those other uses, commercial uses, to the vacant property that'll be next to Costco. That would possibly bring other uses that would also help to support and buoy this auto center up. But I also think that the applicant is here tonight, and they could speak to that as to what their concept and their plan is.
So if I could just add on to that a little bit, we did talk about that initially when the proposal first came to us, about having maybe just like one big auto center there. But right now, the applicant doesn't feel like, that's the full market for that property right there. But with the amendment that we're doing to the specific plan, in the future, if the buildings, aren't sold for industrial uses, they would have the ability to grow into an auto center, to address your point. So we did talk about it in the beginning. Right now, the applicant feels that there's just an appetite for the two locations, but there is ability in the future to expand that with the current specific plan, if approved.
Okay. I think the tenor of my questions might be more appropriate for the applicant, because I'm sort of asking mindset questions that I don't think staff it's fair to ask staff, so I'll hold mine.
All right, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to just say, and again, there's no specific project that's been submitted or that's before us tonight.
There is no
It's just-
specific project. It's just the addendum for the environmental and the amendment to the specific plan that would allow a project to move forward.
Okay. Yeah, Beverly, you had another?
Yeah, I have one other question on the signage. You were talking about that facing the freeway.
Yes.
Would they be able to put it far enough far enough west that it could be seen before the off-ramp?
Yes.
Or is it going to be seen like right where the off-ramp starts? or
No,
after?
it would be farther west so that it's got better visibility, both when you're coming south or eastbound on the 101, but then you would actually be able to get underneath the freeway or underneath the overpass and then still be able to see the signage in
Okay.
time enough to be able to get off on Central if you needed to and come back around to the auto center.
Okay. Yeah, I just wasn't sure on the placement of that, and I was concerned with the off-ramp.
Yeah, it would be as far west as possible on the
Okay.
property.
Okay. And I think some of my questions that I had came up with, I think are going to be more towards when we actually see the actual plan.
Mm-hmm.
So, anything, a couple of questions, or one or two on the traffic study and such, but I think that's more appropriate when we get to actually talking about whatever we
Well,
see
we
is
also,
coming
we
in.
do have Rincon here as well.
Okay.
So, again, they're the ones that prepared the traffic study that was part of the analysis that was done for the addendum. So they would be able to speak to that better than I would.
Okay.
But again, their analysis was really a comparison of the previous development and previous traffic studies and how this will impact based on those previous.
Correct.
That is as the groundwork was the previous documents.
That's where I saw the best comparison of what was there at the last environmental impact changes and what we're doing now.
Right.
So, yes. Thank
Great.
you.
Yep.
Anything else
No,
for now?
I'm fine.
How about you, Rob? Okay, so if there's no further questions of staff, we'll open the public hearing. Open it, and we would ask the applicant to come forward. I think we have a speaker card for Mr. Hargrave.
Good evening, Chairman Edsel and Planning Commission members. I'm Dennis Hardgrave, representing the owners as well as the applicants for this specific plan amendment and CEQA process. As you know, we've been involved in the Airport North process, I'd say, for most of my adult life, and we are glad to see this process move forward with this update. This is the third step in a process that we began, as most of you know, about 3 years ago. And it is a accumulation of a mutual city and ownership goal to update the Airport North specific plan to conform with the city's economic development strategy. The city worked long and hard on developing that strategy, and the Airport North plan was not in a position where it really could nimbly or adequately address what was brought up in the strategy. Staff has clearly outlined tonight the changes to the specific plan, all of which are intended to make the property more attractive to users that the city would like to see either locating in or expanding in Camarillo and not moving somewhere else. When Airport North was originally approved in the 1980s, it was initially envisioned as one large industrial and corporate campus park with a very minimal amount of commercial of any kind. The fabric of land use planning changed radically over that era. I won't go into the details of it, but one of the major issues that happened was SOAR passed. And as SOAR passed, the long-term anticipated physical growth of housing across the Oxnard Plain decreased, and as a result, housing prices increase, and it becomes more challenging to develop very large-scale industrial commercial complexes. The vision originally, because I did see it when it came to light, was similar to the coal complex near the Orange County Airport, and so that was the thinking behind it at that time. At this point, obviously, the plan needs to be updated, and it has been updated to address the needs and also to be competitive in the region. I do urge you to recommend the specific plan amendment approval and certification be moved on to the City Council for the CEQA document and the SPA. And finally, I just point out that a few things, I can answer a couple of questions if you'd like, possibly related to land use planning. Within the past 7 years, I wrote the update to the Ventura Auto Center specific plan, which was also an ancient document, and we wrote the brand new Olivas Park specific plan, which covers the balance of that undeveloped area between the harbor and the freeway frontage. And so I'm very familiar with what the dynamics of the market have been. One thing we can point out is retail, as staff has mentioned, will be probably maxed out or more by the time both the Costco site and all the freestanding available pads that could be in the remaining Amara property are developed. Auto dealerships are entirely dependent on freeway frontage, and the applicant is here tonight, and they can explain that from their professional perspective. So the scale of the auto center could change. This specific plan gives the flexibility for that to happen if the market drives it, but it's an unknown beyond the core dealers that desperately really want to be in this town right now. So that's how that stands. Finally, the industrial commercial, or the LM component, is geared distinctly towards the goals of the economic development policy, in that it's to create job creation centers that can create high-paying jobs, and we can capture people that are traveling outside the county. So it's not an inconsistent mix of land uses. It's really a horizontal mixed use if you think of it. It's not an uncommon trait to do, and so we're comfortable with it. The concept of going to the McGrath property, I would have to say candidly, is 5 to 7 years out, and so the opportunities are definitely missed, and we don't know what that horizon will look like, and if that EIR and project amendment comes forward in the next 2 years, we'll be, looking at our crystal balls and throwing darts at the board on that, hoping that we've targeted that. But we have a specific enough amendment here that I think we can work through this phase and complete this phase 1 and 2 build out. Here for any other questions, and also the applicants here.
Do you have any questions, Mr. Harder?
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to, Camarillo has done a remarkable job, and I know you've been involved in Camarillo life for many decades, so I know you understand this, but they've done a phenomenal job of mixing land uses, smart growth, always maintaining infrastructure to support that growth. And I look at Thousand Oaks, they have a XYZ dealerships. I look at Oxnard, they have XY dealerships, and then Ventura has duplicate. And having just worked on it, I know you're probably very familiar with that. So I just don't understand the economic vitality or feasibility of a 1 or 2 dealerships that would potentially draw, I don't know who, because they've already got 3 other mega or larger auto complexes to choose from. So I don't understand what will support it, and so I have fear that we're going to build. It's like if you build it, they won't come.
Right.
That's my concern.
Right. I know we're not talking about the project tonight, so
and I appreciate that. And I guess I'm looking at
and the applicant can address it. I'll have him introduce himself in a moment.
So I guess what I'm looking at is this is just simply opening the door to something.
Correct.
Why waste an applicant's time if we're not going to? In other words, if it just doesn't seem right, why would we waste a person's time?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it's going to be there.
Yes, and we aren't, and so I think policy-wise what we're putting is the flexibility in place that this can happen without the mandate that it happens. So that's the advantage of it all being zoned LM.
Yeah, I understand that, but policy inertia also tends to forward things, and once we've opened a door to things, they tend to just sort of manifest themselves. So
I'll let the applicant address the dealership ranges. I would point out 2 things. First of all, the visual that you see in this city is because of the hard work of staff and the cooperation we've had and several other developers have had over the last 25 years in creating the connectivity and the flow and the open space and the character consistency of what happens. And so as a result, those same high standards are baked into the specific plan, first of all. They're also highly vetted as it goes through the staff process. And as a new developer comes to town, they learn how we do things, and we work with them on that. And so I think that what you'll see when a project comes forward, it will check all the boxes that you're looking for that connectivity and that character of design and the walkability. I like the fact that just across the freeway, what people were moaning about was going to happen at Springville hasn't. And you can see kids from all over playing in the park, and you see people jogging and walking, and another phase will come on. And it all works, even though you may not see it when you think of it on paper, but the documents give us the framework for it to work. So that's the one thing. And the other part is we have two very successful dealerships in the city right now. And that's an incentive and a visual cue to other dealers, I think. And they function very well where they're at. And those dealers are not looking to go to an auto mall, I can assure you that. So, thanks. And is it okay if I have the?
Wait, before you step aside, did Beverly have questions of Mr. Hargrave?
I don't think my questions are directed to what you would be answering,
Okay,
but thank you.
great.
Okay, and if you could state your name for the record, and then when you're finished, you can fill out a blue card they have in the back, so.
Will do. So my name is Brendan Kotler. I'm the Chief Investment Officer for Faring. So I'm here to speak on behalf of the application. I'd like to just directly address Commissioner Davidson some of the questions that you had. We have no intention of spec building an auto dealership. So this concern about building it and hoping that a dealer comes is not what our intention is. We through our kind of business activities, we have about 25 dealerships that we own through ourselves and through some related companies. And so we would be bringing a dealership that exists in one of the scenarios that you just described to build a flagship here. It'd actually be 2 dealerships with related branding. The goal is actually to keep expanding it. And so and I think, the staff even spoke to the idea that the specific plan amendment allows for that. It's hard at this point in time to make any project work if you leave just blank space. And so you should think of the industrial land as kind of the allowed filler that really does support a lot of the community's goals. But the goal ultimately would be to continue to bring existing dealers in the broader region to Camarillo. I'm sure as you've been driving up and down the 101, especially when you head towards Thousand Oaks, you've seen some of the new rehabilitations they've been doing to some of the dealers there. That's pretty common. Usually about 10 to 15 years into a dealership's lifetime, especially, and this is shortened, usually be 30, 40, 50 years, you could go with the same facade, the same brand look for a dealer, and be relatively successful. What has happened really as the internet, frankly, as Tesla and some of the other online-focused dealers have come to be, is the need to refresh your branding has shrunk dramatically. And so even traditional dealers have seen that the ability to continue to attract the best customers, to stay on top of the market, they have to consistently be upgrading their facilities. What this represents, given the freeway frontage, and frankly, given all the work that's already been done on Springville, is the ability to build out the first, call it 10 acres directly on the freeway frontage, and then continue to wrap around Springville and grow that space so that as more dealers come, and as we can frankly attract more dealers, but more candidly buy more dealerships and bring the brands here, that would be the intention. We would never want to be in a situation where we didn't have a brand that we were building for. We build for brands, we partner with brands, so we would bring brands here. And once they're here, especially as a build-to-suit flagship, they will be here for an extended period of time. This is not going to be kind of a slam them into an existing or change out some dealers, which I think you've experienced, well, not you, but the community has experienced up in Ventura and certainly in Thousand Oaks, where there have been some brands that have changed hands within the same building. That never really works to be optimal. So our goal would be, and our goal is, build flagship dealerships here, pulling from some of those adjacent communities, which is not admittedly great for them, but it is great for Camarillo, and the opportunity to build something really special here and continue to expand it as more and more dealers are excited to join. So hopefully that kind of addresses your concern to a certain extent.
Yeah, I didn't think you were going to spec dealer,
Yeah.
your terminology. I didn't necessarily think that. It sounds, though, that your business plan really sort of assumes that the rest of that property would then become available for additional dealerships, as opposed to, as staff described it, the potential to have more of a mixed use with some bio research and some other things. It really sounds like you're banking on the ability to sort of create under your umbrella a series of dealers. In other words, Ventura County's next auto mall 3.0 in Camarillo.
Yeah, fair point. It's a little bit hard. So this is a relatively saturated market. There aren't a lot of brands that we think would fit in this broader market that don't already have space. And so in terms of the timing of when that would happen, it's not quite clear. We have 2 brands that have existing space that are, as kind of dyed-in-the-wool, kind of American brands as you can imagine, who want to come here from an existing space that we own the adjacent dealership, we want to bring it here. The ability to expand will really be upon kind of whether or not other brands and other dealerships are ones that we can buy and bring here. The interesting dynamic is that while we are the developer, because we do develop, we're also the owner. We're buying all the land. And so it's really in our control to kind of move the pieces around as we see fit. And even as we certainly intend to come back within the next month or so with an IPD to allow us to at least get the first 2 dealers in and have the opportunity to potentially build some of the kind of light manufacturing and industrial buildings, with having control of the land, as we continue to expand, we can continue to modify the uses because the specific plan gives us that flexibility. So it's really about striking while the iron's hot, taking advantage of these brands that want to come here right now. But not all dealers, and it's very seldom actually that a dealer owns the land that their dealership is on. Often they're paying rent. We've tried to always own the dirt. It's kind of own the dirt and the sky. There's a ton of candidly value creation, and it gives us a lot of control and a lot of staying power. And so that's what we see this entire purchase being. If we wanted to, there was an opportunity to simply buy the top piece and put a dealership there, but the opportunity to have a bigger piece and to be a more kind of key component to this community and to have the longevity to stay in this community, I think was something that we were really excited about. And then having the kind of complementary uses available were something that we were really focused on. And the staff did a great job of being clear that previously, I think for this site, I think an Amazon might have been proposed, or there were some other heavy users from an industrial perspective that were being proposed. And the staff said, well, we want industrial writ large, including R&D and manufacturing. We really don't want that kind of high octane fulfillment use. And candidly, you wouldn't want that next to a dealership either. And so it really kind of dovetailed nicely with what we were trying to approach. And you can see, hopefully you'll see in some of the design specifications that we'll come to later, that we're really trying to make a nice, as the staff said, a walkable community, but providing the flexibility to allow it to grow. I don't know that an auto mall per se is in the future. I think honestly the auto mall model is kind of antiquated. I think this is about creating really cool experiences that are specific to the brands that want to be here. And so you design it to those brands as opposed to the buyer who's just gonna come and spend 3 hours looking at a bunch of cars. We all do our own research. We've all looked at the cars online, or most of the buyers at this point. It's less of a random, kind of window shopping, and much more about creating that specific relationship between the brand and the buyer. And so I don't necessarily know that it's about grouping them together in auto malls as much as it's about being the best brand expression you can have on any given site. Oh, I did want to acknowledge your questions as well. So we looked at retail. We are still looking at retail. One of the tricky components, though, as a community that is as built out with retail as this one, I'm very familiar with this community. I grew up San Fernando Valley, played baseball here, still take my kids out here for travel ball. Funny how Camarillo seems to host every weekend some sort of travel ball tournament. We never have a hard time finding a restaurant. And so the concern was that if you add too much more retail, you're gonna start to cannibalize some of the existing retail. And unfortunately, the retailers that typically lose are usually not the big national brand name retailers, it's the smaller mom and pops. And so when we did a lot of our market research on what else to put, because again, our driving goal was the auto dealership. That was like the thing we had, and then literally we had a conversation with our staff where I said, what else can we put here? And specifically talking about the piece that's south of Ventura, that's kind of closest to the airport. And retail was something that we're familiar with. So we're like, oh, we'll just put retail. But the reality is the market is relatively well saturated, and any new retail that comes in probably starts to pull away as opposed to add some of the existing retail uses. And so we want to make this space feel like a campus and feel like a really community designed nicely with the heritage zones. But we want to do that for the people who are going to be working there and maybe walking by, as opposed to attracting too many new retail customers or retail users.
Well, and I think in the plans it had something towards identifying what type of retail, like large item retail or something was mentioned.
Oh, like big box stores?
No, not big box stores, and not like, I should have copied that page.
No worries.
But there was kind of a definition on if there was retail. It wasn't little things that people would be coming in and buying.
Yeah. No,
It wasn't like a market or a store or something that was parts or, something that were more precise and larger type items?
No, I think that, and I think there's still a chance for that. I mean, the beauty of these smaller scale, still large, but in the world of industrial, smaller scale buildings is they're utilitarian. You can it can be everything from like a CrossFit gym to a manufacturing space to an R&D space. And so what the city has been really focused on in terms of our design, you'll see that in about a month or so, is making it as approachable and as beautiful as possible and trying to steer it away from kind of the Inland Empire kind of monolith design that you see some of the industrial buildings. This is about creating the biggest blank canvas for the types of uses, but kind of restraining it to make sure that it stays walkable, designed beautifully, all the things that this community is known for. And from our perspective, making sure that it stays consistent with what our core driver is, which is that auto dealer up top.
So could we see you then future as it's developed, since you own all the land? And there could be the possibility, you were talking dealerships along Springville Road, that if you were to start with any sort of industrial, you'd be starting on the west side of the property and build that out first.
I mean, we don't quite know what our dedicated phasing would be, but my guess is it's probably that piece south of Ventura, closest to the freeway, that we don't have a ton of great ideas for, but industrial seems to be the highest and best use for that land. And then really, that southwest corner, furthest from the auto, to give the best chance for the auto to kind of continue to wrap around. Industrial typically doesn't need to be on major thoroughfares. It doesn't need signage. And so, especially with the grade change on Springville, that's not the best place to really be starting the industrial. It's probably kind of further in that corner, closer to where the existing industrial already exists today.
Makes sense. Any questions?
No, thank you, I appreciate your.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. I'll fill out a card.
Yeah, he has one for you there, yeah. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on this agenda item?
If we can have Rincon come up, I would like to ask a couple questions, just.
Yeah, Commissioner Vandermolen would like to ask some questions of Rencon. And if you could state your name for the record, please.
Hi, good evening. Danielle Griffith with Rincon Consultants.
Hi, thank you. And these are just kind of quick questions, but when I was reading the traffic study and it talked about everything was judging on the peak hours. And right now, when you have cars going either direction on the freeway and getting off at Springville, a lot of them are turning towards the housing rather coming down to the commercial and industrial areas. And then the other thing that I kind of thought about was that it's all addressed to peak hours, but once we start adding any sort of commercial, retail, automotive stuff, you're going to have people coming in any time of day, evenings and weekends. And I don't know if I just didn't read enough farther into it to see what that might be doing to the traffic on an all-around basis rather than just peak times.
Okay, so there's two things. We did not prepare another traffic study for this specific project because the project itself fell within the envelope of the previous environmental impact report that was prepared, the land use envelope.
Okay.
So all of the traffic patterns that were studied from the previous EIR were analyzed under this land use envelope. And so all of the impacts that were found within that study were the same, similar to the proposed project for this project. So the actual traffic patterns that were found from the previous specific plan and then the subsequent EIRs are the same and similar traffic patterns that are being proposed here. I don't know if that helps or doesn't help answer your question, but for traffic studies, peak hour is the worst case scenario of traffic that can be coming to and from a site. So whatever conditions were allowable then will be the same conditions that will be with the use that's being proposed now. Is that helpful?
Kind of. To me, I see maybe just a lack of information on what's really happening since they've been building out the residential north of the freeway, and the retail and industrial south of the freeway.
So we did look at all of the cumulative conditions from the previous document that was certified in 2006 and then the subsequent 2011 documents, and we looked at the cumulative conditions that were analyzed at that time. And we also then went back and looked at the then approved surrounding cumulative development projects to make sure there were not going to be any thresholds that were going to be tripped from those other projects that were approved that were not considered within this specific plan. And they actually did not trip any additional environmental thresholds, including traffic. So the traffic conditions that were approved at the time of the 2006 and 2011 documents will remain the same and wouldn't cause any additional peak threshold trips.
Okay, yeah, I guess that's part of my concern is as we get more and more retail and shops and things, we're not just looking at peak time traffic anymore.
Right. So, well, we also look at vehicle miles traveled now too, but because of the conditions in the 2006 and 2011 documents were all LOS, so the conditions at intersections and roadway segments are still within what the allowable and approved uses at the time the two previous EIRs were certified.
Okay.
So, and we did look at not just the cumulative conditions from those two documents, but then what has been built outside of those specific plan, excuse me, the certified specific plan cumulative conditions, plus other approved projects within the city that have been approved that could have contributed to those traffic conditions.
Okay,
Is that helpful?
kind of. More than what I knew, so that's good.
So I'd just like to add that, I mean, ultimately, these evaluations and these studies, they're evaluated based on, when it's a specific plan, the evaluation is done on the total possible build-out, which we're looking at 4,379,000 square feet.
Okay.
And we're only at 1,700,000 square feet. So ultimately, the traffic study was evaluating
The whole project.
$4 million or 4 million square foot build-out. And so that's
Okay.
what you were seeing when it comes to those LOSs, and it still doesn't have an impact because the way Ventura Boulevard was designed and the way Springville was designed, they were designed to be able to absorb the traffic from $4 million or 4 million square feet of build-out.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Cumulative projects and the cumulative projects too outside of the specific plan boundaries.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on this agenda item?
Yes, I think just to maybe provide a little further insight from the team, Dave Rand is a CEQA expert representing the team, and he can give some internal response to that as well on traffic.
Thank you, Dennis. It takes a village to answer traffic questions. Dave Rand, my firm Rand Pastor Nelson works with the applicant. I just wanted to answer your very specific question relative to, you only saw peak hour numbers in the traffic study. Traffic study did look at average daily traffic, the number of daily trips as well, not
Okay.
just AM and PM peak hour. There were about 1,400 fewer daily trips associated with the contemplated project than the previously approved 2016 EIR. And to your question about was the distribution of the traffic appropriately tailored to this project, these land uses, the answer is yes. When the traffic study was done, the traffic engineer, who's not with us tonight, but he evaluated where the distribution was likely to go based on the anticipated land uses. And as Ms. Griffiths alluded to, after doing that and after seeing the reduction in daily traffic, it was determined that none of the intersections level of service would degrade below the city's acceptable thresholds, which they deem at level of service C. So those traffic levels would be maintained lesser included than what was previously analyzed in 2016.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
Now I
thank
know
you.
better where I need to look to find that information.
Okay, we have another speaker. You come forward, please.
Good evening, Chair, Planning Commissioners. My name's Jose Garcia. I'm a proud member of the Laborers International Union of North America. I know we're not here for a project today, but we're here to support the changes and the approval of the EIR. This developer, we've worked with him before. Class A, bringing good union-paid wages to these projects. It's kind of unheard of in the private industry. So any chance we get to support them, we're here in full support, and we ask that you support them as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for your input. Is there anybody else tonight that's going to speak on this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and go to any commissioner comment. I'll start with you, Rob.
I guess I struggle seeing the vision, and I appreciate the description you provided. I appreciate you took my hand and walked me down the path, and I feel like I understand now what your company's vision is. I don't necessarily take issue with that. I don't want to say compatibility is my concern. It just feels like we're putting two different color socks on in this general area, and I just can't get past it. I envision what it is, and maybe I can't get past that abomination of a Ventura Auto Center sign, and I know that won't happen here. Our staff will ensure it. You would probably sign in blood that you won't, so please don't. That's a red herring. But what I'm saying is that I just still can't get past seeing Camarillo as a auto destination. I know you're not trying to sell it as that, and I know I understand your vision and words about the auto complex being a thing of the past. It just feels like if we're built out on retail, why aren't we necessarily built out on auto dealerships in the same region? So I'm still struggling with that, and I'll just leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Do you have any comments?
Yeah. Well, I found from listening and the answers and all the information that we've been given, I see that what we're dealing with right now is still just pretty much a blank slate. It's got possibilities. It could go auto dealership, it could go industrial, it could go office, it could go any number of uses on that whole big parcel of land. I think it's a little more comforting in knowing that they could bring more auto dealerships in to kind of balance it out a little bit. I know initially, I think when we had the two that are on the freeway now, that was one split into two, and then till Tesla came in, there were some people I know that weren't really wild about, residents that weren't really wild about having auto dealerships just sitting there on their own on the freeway in Camarillo. And so I'm a little concerned about what the public will think if there's more auto dealerships on the freeway in Camarillo, but not a whole big area. But I would not be in favor of having an auto mall. But I like the way that this is designed to be any number of possibilities, but that the basic is still going to be the sidewalks, the trees, the plants that are going to look nice, in the area. So it's not going to look like any sort of a commercial auto place that you see in Ventura or Oxnard or Thousand Oaks. So with that, and listening to all the descriptions and the possibilities, I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, my comments, I think I'm comfortable too. I think as far as the use, I'm not sure it's within our purview to be concerned about the economics of it, because that's really the developers and the expert and economists and marketing people that make that decision. I don't think I have any qualification to do that, and there's no specific project before us tonight. So just expanding this amendment, which we've amended this thing several times over the years since I've been on the commission as the market changes and stuff, I can support it. And I think what actually comes before us will be dictated by the market and the experts, and I can't see anybody wanting to invest a substantial amount of money to speculate that something might work there. So anyway, I'm comfortable and can support it. see, any staff comments on anything?
If I could just, chime in here real quick. So we kind of have a unique situation here with the planning commission. We have 3 of the 5 members here on the dais. So I was wondering if the city attorney could kind of explain in order for these 2 resolutions to pass, what the vote would have to be.
Certainly. Chair, members of the commission. So the item before you is a recommendation on a specific plan. So whatever decision the planning commission ultimately makes, it's still going to make its way to the council for a final decision. With that having been said, there's 5 members on the planning commission, so recommendations have to be made by a majority vote. So in this case, there's 2 absent. It would have to be unanimous among the 3 in order for it to pass.
Okay. Is there any more discussion or that, or should we call for a resolution? The only thing I wanted to add, and I didn't during the public comments, is we did have a written communication for somebody that opposed the project, and I just wanted to mention that because that'll be entered in the record. Yeah, Mr. Davidson?
And Chairman, I want to say publicly that your comments about what is and isn't before us are well taken, and I have to agree with that it's not our purview to, at this point, to do that. I guess my concern comes in is, and I said this to the applicant, is that if we open a door and they're thinking we're sending a signal, and then something more specific comes forward, and if any opposition were to be voiced at that point, it might seem like sort of a shell game that was played, because at this point we're allowing something to move forward that potentially down the road might be a little bit more controversial to push through or pass. So I guess in the vein of just full disclosure is that, I understand the ability to have this be a blank slate and to have all the options. But I also understand that there's a business out there that is kind of reliant upon this with the intent that they're going to be the owner of that property and want to use it in a manner that is fitting with their business plan. And they're going to rely upon sort of the intention of what we say tonight to lead them down that road. And I would hate to give a false sense of that the road will be not bumpy. And so therein lies my concern. I feel like I will support this tonight because, one, I think it's a political decision that our city council counterparts and elected officials should more appropriately take on. And I think I have dabbled a bit in their realm, and maybe I shouldn't have, but I wanted to be fully transparent. So I will support it today, but I guess my comments are on the record, and so I'll just leave it at that. But I do take what you said to heart, and I do agree with you that it's not our purview, but I do think it's our purview to be transparent about what the next steps could potentially hold.
Yeah.
Chair,
No, and your comments are well taken.
Thank you.
if I may just briefly respond. So the commission is acting in an advisory capacity, so it does not confer any approvals, and there wouldn't be any potential reliance on the commission's decision this evening. It's simply a recommendation to the city council on a legislative action.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you have any comments too, or should
No, I think I don't have any other than what I already
Okay.
voiced.
Yes, I think time to call for a resolution.
Okay, resolution number PC 2024-4, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Camarillo recommending approval of an addendum to a final subsequent EIR for an amendment to the Airport North Specific Plan and development of 46.88 acres of vacant property in the specific plan.
I'll waive further reading and move for acceptance. Is that all right?
Do you like a second?
Can I second?
There's a motion on the floor. It can be seconded.
I can second it then?
Yes.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded, and all vote.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Vandermeulen,
Yes.
Chair Etzel.
Yes.
All right, so for the second resolution, it's resolution number PC 2024-5, a a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Camarillo recommending approval to the City Council of a request by Faring Capital LLC for an amendment to the Airport North Pacific Plan.
Again, I'll move to waive further reading and move to acceptance.
And I guess I'll do the second. And all in favor, or call for a vote, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Vandermeulen,
Yes.
and Chair Etzel.
Yes. Okay, these items are stand approved. So then we just move on to the next item, which is a discussion item from David? No? No director's report? Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, we don't have any items tracking for the next Planning Commission meeting on April 16th, so we anticipate that potentially being canceled. But we do have up to 2 items for April 30th, so we're tracking for that one.
Okay, great, thank you.
Then just to let all of you know, I will not be at the 30th, at the meeting on the 30th.
Hopefully everybody else will be back, so. Any comments tonight?
No, I've
No.
said enough tonight.
Yeah. No, I think it was great discussion, and that's why our system works. We can agree to disagree or whatever, but I think it was well vetted.
No, I think it's really good that we do, when we do have different opinions, one, it's good that we have different opinions.
I agree.
And that we voice them, and we all get to hear those opinions and weigh them in our discussions and our decisions. So,
And I think that's the first time the chairman's ever had to second a vote, so it's a precedent setting.
Forge new ground.
Yeah. With that being